Is it Dustin Wolf's time to shine? And what could the Flames realistically get back in a trade for Chris Tanev? Hey everyone, welcome into Burning Questions. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Postmedia Calgary Flames writer Danny Austin. And Danny, the Flames began life without Jacob Markstrom, losing 5-2 to Minnesota. But in that game, we saw Dustin Wolf come into the game in relief for Dan Vladar. Wolf allowing a couple of goals on 13 shots, did make a couple of nice saves, though. Now, of course, he is the goalie of the future, but with Markstrom out, is now the time for the Flames to see what they have in the 22-year-old?
Simple answer is yes. To be perfectly honest with you, I think that we are going to see a fair bit of Dustin Wolf. The question is how long Jacob Markstrom is out for, because ultimately when Markstrom is back, they're not going to be carrying three goalies on the roster, and they absolutely have to send Wolf back. I mean, they have to put the other two through waivers, so Wolf will go back to the AHL, at least for as long as Vladar and Markstrom are on the roster. But I was fascinated last night. I mean, when they pulled Vladar, who was not having a bad game, this is nothing personal against Vladar, and put Dustin Wolf in early in the second period against the Wild, I haven't heard an ovation like that from the Saddledome crowd in a long time. I mean, people are dying to see this kid. There's so much hype surrounding him. I think people love his story. He's an undersized guy, got drafted pretty late, and has just thrived everywhere he's gone. So, fans are ready for it. We sort of thought Markstrom would be gone for maybe a month or longer when we heard that he'd fractured his finger. Ryan Huska has clarified that it might only be a week. So this may not be the longest cameo from Dustin Wolf that we're ever going to see, but fans are rightfully excited. I think the organization wants to get Dustin Wolf games. They just can't, given their current situation. And I think a byproduct of all of this is if Dan Vladar can get some games and play really well, it probably ups his trade value long term, and that could clear the way for Dustin Wolf to be here full time. I say here as if the Wranglers and Flames don't play in the same rink, but yeah, it's everything you're saying. The answer is yes. This is Dustin Wolf's time. It's just a matter of how long Markstrom's out for.
So the trade winds continue to swirl around the Flames after the Nikita Zadorov trade. Calgary getting a third and a fifth round pick in exchange for the defenseman. Chris Tanev's name continues to come up, and for good reason. When you look at the return that the Flames got for Zadorov, what does that tell you about what they may get for Tanev if they do decide to move him?
I don't think it tells you that much. I think that Zadorov had put in a trade request. I think that there were reasons to ship him out. I think that ultimately the most valuable thing that the Flames got for Nikita Zadorov was salary cap space. They didn't retain a single dollar. That's probably not going to happen with Chris Tanev. I think what you'll probably see is the Flames wait a little bit. I think his value is going to increase. It's very hard, a deal that happens right at the trade deadline, you're going to get more for than you are from a contender who's desperate for Zadorov. Zadorov has already moved the market. That's one less guy who is no longer available, which means that Tanev's value goes up. And I'll be honest with you, I really do think, we're here in Canada. I think that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be in on Chris Tanev. I think, I'm born and raised in Toronto. He's an East York guy. It would be a cool homecoming story. I think he'd be a great fit there, that sort of hard-nosed defenseman who will throw himself in front of every puck. I think he's going to be perfect. But, the question is what sort of assets are available. And I just think that right now we should expect, whether it's with Tanev or Hanifin or Lindholm, I expect the Flames just to kind of see where the market takes them. And I do not think we're going to see a move particularly imminently. I may be proven wrong. You can hit me up on Twitter if that's what happened. But look, I think Chris Tanev is going to get you a better return than Nikita Zadorov did. And I think that return is only going to continue to improve as we get closer to the trade deadline. But I would expect the Flames to be looking for a really good piece, because Chris Tanev is the type of player who, he's not going to be your number one or number two. I'm not saying that, but a sort of a third or fourth defenseman, a bit of a depth guy, he's as good as you're going to get, especially for a team that wants to win the Stanley Cup. He's a perfect fit.
Yeah, everybody talks about guys that you want to come playoff time, and he fits that bill perfectly. Lastly, when you lose a guy like Zadorov, you lose a lot of physicality on the back end. Is that something that the Flames need to find internally now moving forward?
Yeah, and I think it's, when we say internally, I think that every single player on the Flames roster is going to have to show something on the physicality side. This was brought up today in our media availability with Ryan Huska. Just, hey, are you worried about the way that you guys are playing early in games in terms of physicality? And he said absolutely. He made a joke yesterday that Dan Vladar was their most physical player in the first period against the Minnesota Wild. And that was a joke, but not necessarily entirely a joke. There was some truth to it. And this is a team that missing Zadorov. AJ Greer fought in the second period. Great fight if you haven't seen it. Really fun one. But you can't ask AJ Greer to go 3 rounds. And this isn't all about fighting either, but that internal toughness, that physicality early in the games, not waiting to get hit before you throw a hit, just being locked in and going out and imposing yourself physically on a game is something that I think the Flames are really desperate for. I think when they're at their best, they are forechecking hard. They're not trying to drive guys through the wall. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about finishing your checks. We're talking about, as Huska said, leading with your stick and following with your body. That type of thing. And the reality is this Flames team doesn't have, it's not just fighters. They have speed, they have skill, but they might be lacking a little bit of that physicality. So I do think it's something that I don't know that there is someone, an Adam Klapka, for example, with the Wranglers is a big guy, 6'7", I believe. He could come in potentially, but I don't think that that's happening anytime soon. I think it's more about the team committing to playing a physical style as opposed to necessarily trying to get other players who can come in, because I don't know that they have that perfect, dare I say it, Matthew Tkachuk type who can play skilled and physical at the same time. I don't know that they have one of those guys in their system.
Yeah, hard to replace that type of player for sure. Have questions about the Flames that you want answered, send them to calgaryflames@postmedia.com and we'll answer them here. For Danny Austin, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time on another Burning Questions.